Hello and welcome back to another show of Fuse Design. I'm edA-qa and I'm sorry I've been away for a while. I've been caught up in a bit of a move and now I'm back with all new equipment, so please excuse me a little bit if I'm doing something a bit weird. I think I've solved the audio problem on Mac, so the fan's not going to go crazy, except I'm actually capturing this through a capture card which has a different resolution, so that might be a bit weird, but it should be okay. I have the chat off the screen now. We have less space. I can see that somewhere else. And I hope I see it somewhere else. If I look over here, it just means I'm looking at chat. Feel free to say something. I'll just write testing now just so we have something there. And now let's get on the show. This show is about using Fuse, a product called Fuse Open Now, as it's now been open sourced. And what we're going to do from today is a request from a user, Sats. He wanted to see how to do a design effect, and it was open here just a second ago. Here it is somewhere. And so this was the effect he wanted to see. On input boxes you have these placeholders and what happens here. And this one I'm trying to do, so the first thing of this show, it's a little bit straightforward, I hope it's not too much of a challenge to do this one. And so I'm going to do that one today. We'll just do it without a component first. Let's just do a basic text input and see how it works. This placeholder will be more of a field name. It's a bit weird. And I'll show how to do the transition and how to get that working. I have the basics set up here. I have the preview and I have the basic text input, which is not too exciting yet. And you notice these have a line underneath them, so let's do that one right away. There's a line, and I'm just going to presume it's black, even though it probably isn't black. So we're going to stick this thing in the middle. Alignment equals vertical center. Rectangle. And even though this doesn't really make a big difference, I'm going to throw it in the background just in case. Layer equals background and color equals, just make it black for now. Height equals 2. Alignment equals bottom. And that should bring it up for us. That brings up hello. It looks actually a bit thicker. Make this window a bit narrower so it doesn't cover it up. So it's actually either not as thick or it's actually more of a gray color. Probably a bit of both. I'm not going to worry too much. Let's make it a bit thinner and see what that looks like. Well, height 1 is really weird. That was not intended. Uh-oh. Where did border go? Oh, I know why. Probably in that log file. We should probably make the color correct. And give this thing a margin just so it sits away from the side so we have a better representation. And so this is your basic text box. You don't have anything special here. And you can tell when it's activated with a placeholder. And for now I'm going to make a hard-code placeholder. Let's put something text value equals name. And font size equals, let's just make this 18. This text size here should also be font size equals 18. I think that's the correct way to do that. I'm not sure. There we go. So now you have it overlapping, which is obviously not good. So let's get rid of the default value to the text input. We want to see what happens when we get rid of that. So we have the name, but of course now if you click on this, and yeah, this is we'll get to the focus a little bit later. Just ignore the focus for now. Let's just say hit test mode equals none. Now you can actually click there and it gets there. Well, I'm going to get back to the focus and how we can do the proper focus following as we make this component. Let's worry about the effect right now. So what is the effect? Is that when this thing has focus, we want to move the other text up. So this text requires a name. At any point, if you have questions, just feel free to ask. I'll actually glance at the other screen to see what's coming up. And again, this is all new, well, except for the laptop, for the MacBook, it's all new equipment. And I have to do it on this screen, not the main one, because the main one's actually a 4K screen, and I can't figure out how to get it hooked up correctly with the Mac and record it. So I'm using a capture card, which is also the wrong size, but that's something different. And put label there. And so when this one, while focused, Might just be while focus. We're just going to move the other one. Move target equals label y equals. And this is going to be a fixed height because we have these 18s here. We know the size of these things, and it's probably going to get mad at us for something. Target. Alright, so it moved it. It didn't move it in the right location. That was fairly obvious because y equals minus 20. And what is the duration? Let's go look at this background here. We have this actually CSS here, so somewhere here must give us the duration. There's an animation here somewhere, I would bet. And we can probably pick that out from there. But it even has a bottom. It has a, let's take that bottom color as well. Well, not as well since we have it. Let's make a color. 1 pixel solid. We have the same thing. And we have the color of the text as too, but label is 999, font size 18. Well, it's not really, that's a 18 pix is not the same as size as font 19, but I really don't like people that use pixel on the web. It's not a good approach. You should be using some sort of points, but I guess web, I just don't know web lately, so let's just ignore that. And color was that. There we go. So I have some basic. Now what I was looking for was the ease all. What is the easing here? So we have a transition 0.2%, and I don't really know CSS, but I'm assuming this is 0.2, and I don't know what easing that has. But now if we see, if we go and focus on it, we get that transition. It doesn't have the same size. So what is the size actually doing? Let's see, we click on this. It changes the color too, and we have this bar effect on the bottom. We'll get to that. And ease all, transition, ease all. I don't know what that means, ease all. Is there a standard easing? Maybe this is like linear or something like that. H2 small. And there's, it changes. Somewhere there's a blue thing here. Let's worry about the effects. I'd like to get exactly the same, but you know, there's a lot of code here in CSS to do some very basic things. And I can't figure out what the transition is. So let's just, there's like something called scale here or anything. What do we want to actually get out of this? We want a different size, input 18. Is there somewhere it changes the size? Input focus is 14 pixels. Okay. So we can do a few things here now. We can actually do change, whoa, what is it? Label dot font size equals 14 as well. We can also do this duration 0.2, and that'll be the same. That'll shrink it down, and you get that. And you can also change the color. Dot color, and I have to figure this is also going to be duration 0.2, I presume. And what color does it end up getting? It's a blue color, but there must be whatever this color is. Let's go with that. Alright, so now when we click on it, we get that small blue. I'm not going to worry about the font. You can check whatever font you want, and that's something you can do. But is the transition actually the same? It's moving further, which may be the reason why it looks like it's moving faster, because ours is moving fairly slow, and because it's just not moving as fast. So let's make it move faster. And it says minus 20 pixels, so let's do, I put minus 20. Well, interesting. So you can see how the sizes make a big difference here. Hello, Kotobotov. Welcome to the show. So this is interesting. He does minus 20 pixels, and I said minus 20 is not the same, and it doesn't really look the same. It definitely looks like it's going further. And so I'm going to make ours go a little bit further. I'm going to say minus, I don't know, let's just do minus 30. And it definitely seems to be going slower. And I think it has to do with the easing, but what easing is this? What is the standard easing on in CSS? I don't know what that is. So let's just try something simple. Let's try easing equals cubic in, I think is what maybe we want. Oh, no, cubic out. Cubic out might make it look faster. Hello, Ahmed. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I got my new equipment set up, and hopefully I can do the show regularly now. I'll have to catch up for a few streams. Alright, so this makes it go a little bit faster. It's not quite the same effect. If somebody happens to know easing a standard in CSS, I can throw that in. Otherwise, I'll leave it like this because this isn't terrible. But this actual text input, we probably want to put some padding on the whole thing. Padding equals, let's just say 2, just give it some space. And we're getting a little bit closer to what we want to do here now. So let's do the little bar at the bottom as well. There's a little bar that has to exaggerate there. And we're going to put that down here. I'm going to stick it in the background as well. And it's going to have the same color as that text. But because it's in the background, we're going to have to put it on top. Let me just finish this off. Height equals 2. Alignment equals bottom. We have to put it on top of this one. And now it'll be big, fat, and blue, which is what we don't want. We want to hide it originally. I'll just call it bar. And this is where it's going to get weird. The width I'm going to say is 0%. And this shouldn't show up at all, so nothing should be there. And in part of this transition now, we'll change that. Change bar width equals 100. And you don't put a unit here. In the changes, you don't put the unit. You just say what's the base value. Fuse cannot do transitions between units because it's actually really weird what would happen. Logically, you'd want to say, well, it should translate to a fixed unit and just do the translation between those. But change is not aware of layout to that level, so it can't really do that. It only change the raw values. And so I'm just going to say duration equals 0.2. And let's see if this actually works. I focus it. And no, it doesn't. Anyway, what if I do 1%? Oh. Why did I call label? That was silly. It's a name. Kind of an idiot. Alright, there we go. We have that zooming effect down there as well. The spacing isn't quite the same. You notice there's a bit more spacing here. It's a bit more exaggerated. And this is where we can play with the padding. And this is why I put these in the background. These will not be affected by the padding. So if we now change the spacing to like 5,3, it moves the name in, but the lines are still in the same place. So you get a bit more padding. And I actually think we should have even more vertical padding to match it a bit. 5,5 is probably okay. Alright, I think that closely matches it well enough. You'll obviously want to adjust it for your own design, whatever your designer comes up with. And how close are we here? We're not quite the same. This almost looks like it's more than 2 pixels thick, which is kind of weird. I'm pretty sure it said 2 pixels here. See, it clearly says 2 pixels, 1 pixel. And again, this is one of the issues with CSS, and a big problem I have with CSS is that their 1 pixel looks smaller than ours, and the 2 pixels look bigger than ours. And pixels on web are not so good because I'm not sure how you see it on the actual stream, but on the Retina display, there's no way that this is actually 2 pixels. This is probably closer to 3 or 4 pixels. And I wonder if I can zoom in. Do I have the zooming in thing function enabled here? Somehow I can do zooming in. I'd really like to. I always forget what the key is. But this is probably more than 2 pixels, so it's going to be like 2 virtual pixels. Fuse works in points, so points is a little bit better. It's a bit more consistent across the devices. Well, you still have to test it. So we have the basic functionality here. You click on a field and it does that. Now this one has an invalid thing. I'm just going to ignore that filter. That should be fairly straightforward to add. But we have something we have to take care of now. When I type in here, then the name goes back down there, and that's not what we want to happen. If we type here and we leave, we want that little name bit to stay up there. So this is a common condition where we have two conditions that have to affect the state of an animation. But you notice it only affects one state of the animation. The line at the bottom is still the same. It only affects that name label. So we're going to split this up into two different bits here. We're going to create an explicit timeline. And not a timeline, a while true. I'm going to do a while true. And just leave it false difference. While true, I'm going to say name off. This has everything to do with the name offset. And we'll just move this up into there. And then we can do name offset dot value equals true. Change that right at the start. So now when we click, it turns on the timeline but you notice a bit of an issue, and this is something to notice, that when I click away, you see the whole thing turn away. It's because this happens at delay 0. And this happens duration 0.2, so when it's going back the other way, it's going to take 0.2 seconds before that happens. The easiest way to change this is just put two while focus to create two separate timelines. So now when we click away, they're independent timelines. They just happen to be 0.2 seconds. Now, why did I do this? I did this because what I want is I have a second condition for when the timelines up there. We have to have a value here somewhere. And I want to see if this is actually going to work. I'm going to say UX name equals input. And text might actually have a special one for being empty. I'm trying to guess here, but there's also a one, string ones. What was the name of that? Fuse open. I've forgotten where this stuff is. There it is. Where are the ducks? It looks like we got some kind of mobile layout. It's kind of annoying. Maybe I can zoom this out. There we go. Now we're back to the non-mobile layouts. I can see the view here. While string is one option. While string is generic, but there's also probably one called while empty, which is a special case. But I'm going to use the generic while string because I think this is actually a more generic way. And it's our searching here. It's not necessarily very good. Let's see if I can just go to while string. There we go. I'm going to do while string, and this gets a value. There should be a value in here somewhere. And I'm going to take the property of input.value. We're just going to forward the value. Although it's possible while string works directly inside the text input, I'd have to check that again. I haven't used it in a while, that some of these things like while string will check their place in the tree and decide, well, hey, text input is a string. Maybe it works. Let's get it working this way and then see what happens there first. And what do we want to do? While string is, and this has a test on it. And test is a value of what do you want to test. There's a lot of implied ones, but we want empty. So let's go to test. I'm going to say is not empty. Because we want something to happen when it's not empty. What we want to happen when it's not empty is we want to change the name of the value off to true. Now we have two things here, the while focused and the while string, which both set this while true to true. It triggers it. And that should give us two conditions by which it keeps that access. So now when we focus, it goes away. Now if I type something, it stays up here because we have this second while string activated. Both of these changes are fine because they're offsets and they have there's no competition for the value. They're both changing it true, otherwise they take whatever state it's currently in, so there's absolutely no competition for that value. Now if we ever remove the text again, it goes back to empty. We'll see that it goes back to that. So that gives us the basic layout. It may not be exactly the same. Let's take a look at it. I mean, it's not exactly the same. There's some details that are missing. But it gives you the basic effect. If you want to play around with the actual sizes, the font, the thickness of the line, you can do all of that. but we have the basic effect and it does the same thing. I'm not going to do the error condition of it. I mean, I could add it. I mean, error is not so hard. What I'd rather do is componentize this first so we can have a name and an email because there's something interesting that's going to come up the moment we stick this into a component, and it has to do with that layout of that moving. Because you notice right now this is centered and the name goes above center. Well, that means this name is actually leaving the space of this element, and we're going to make that clear when I redo this bit here to actually be a component. So now let's do panel. Let's get rid of this alignment here and do panel UX class equals material inputs. Get rid of the alignment now. Whether this class has a margin or the way you use it is really questionable. I'm actually not in favor of core classes having margin because that's what CSS used to do, and it's a real pain in the ass. You have those reset scripts that turn everything off. But because we're making a custom class, you can always say, well, you know, our custom material input always has a margin of 10. So it's a special case. But you might want to create a base class and one derived from it. Padding's totally okay. There's never a question of adding padding to a class. It's just margin is sometimes questionable. So now we have that material input class, and now I'm going to stick a stack panel in the middle. Alignment equals vertical center. And we're going to stick two of these things, material inputs. And you'll notice two problems come up rather quickly. Material input. So I have two of them. They're both called name. That's the first problem. We want to have, that's going to be property. But the second one here is, you notice the name jumps up in the top one. It's because the space for the name is not accounted for in the space of this control. So that's something we have to fix. Let's give it a label first, though. That's an easier one to fix. String UX property equals, we give it a label. And wherever we put name, I'm going to put label instead. I don't remember where we put name. All right, up here. Property, this dot label. And now we have to give him a label. Label equals name, and I think the other one's label equals email. All right, so now we have a name and email. We've made that slight component to it. They still take up more space. All right, so how do we deal with this space? And padding is a very typical way you do it. You say, hey, look, this has more padding. But in this case, it's going to kind of screw it up, but I think we can do it. We're going to say padding. We move it off minus 30. And so let's put a padding of, we have to account for an additional 30. So let's do 35. Whoops, that was the wrong padding. Okay, but you notice now we have the input at the wrong spot. So we can actually move this text input down. And this is where stuff's going to get a little bit weird because we didn't align this stuff. So we're going to say alignment equals bottom. Alignment equals bottom. There are other ways to do this. You can create a subpanel as well. Now that's still not working in the right place I want it. Oh, right, this should only be one-sided. Sorry, this should only be the top. The bottom should have no padding. The bottom should have the normal 5 padding. All right, so now we're in a better position. And now you can see the stack actually has the spacing for it. If we want to make this more appropriate, more clear, let's give this panel an actual color just so we can see where the spacing is. And so now you can see the full size of the control here. It's a little bit more apparent that we have a full-size control, and it's just hidden. This padding approach just says, look, there's some empty space at the top. I'm going to align the things to the bottom, so the stuff's going to go to the bottom, and just give it some extra padding to account for that space. This is one way to do it. Padding is a very good way, and it's because it's simple enough. Otherwise, you can do embedded panels in the chore and more panels, margins, and things like that. But we have that, so we can remove this color. And so we have those two components. we have the name, we have the email. The component isn't quite complete yet though, because we have no way to link up to the value. So we're going to give it another one here called UX property equals value, just to be consistent. And this does some really wacky binding, and it's a little bit hard to get around to. So we're going to say property this.value. And I got something wrong there. What did oh, I typed that string. Okay. Now visually nothing's changed, but what we've done is we've now provided a way to actually associate a value down here. We can bind this together. So you can actually give a name here, and you can bind this to the name if you had a name property. We don't have a name property, so we're going to use the letString function, string equals name. And if we're lucky, so we still bind to name, and what I can do is at the very bottom here, I'm just going to add a spacer panel. Actually, let's just stick this at the very bottom, because it's more of a debug input for now. Text alignment equals bottom. Value equals name. Alright, so we actually have that text at the bottom now as well. And that just shows you, that just completes that component, that it actually exposes a value property, because otherwise the text input would be internal and you couldn't actually bind to it directly. So this just pulls it up one level. And so Ahmed's asking for a hint property. Now, what is the hint property? This is what I'm unsure of this one, is that, whoops, I'm pressing space on the wrong one. If we have this type of layout, what exactly would the input hint be? Is that the, what are you asking for there? Because we have the name, so it's not like a placeholder, because the placeholder is going to be the field name, so we don't need that. Hint, I mean, if like the text input hint. Okay, should be the text input hint. Let me look at that. And text input hint. Text input class. And so text input class has something called hint. Hint. Has an action and stuff like this. Input hint. All right, now if we want to expose this, this is one of these tricky ones. Text input hint, because we have to expose a property called, and this is generally weird. This is supposed to work, but I've honestly never done this with a hint. Dot text input hint. And where do I put this? Property this dot hint. A hint is targeted for mobile. So Ahmed actually means a placeholder. I'm not sure. Let's just finish this off first to see if I didn't screw this up so bad. Got some kind of log here. What do they actually call it? Input hint. So Ahmed, for that, if we're actually talking about a placeholder, where would the placeholder be displayed? Is there like a mobile placeholder that displays it as well, or? I'm not clear on where I'd put the placeholder. That's fine. Right, and there's no way I can show a hint here right now. That's a mobile thing. But now we can actually stick here and we can say hint equals email. Or input hint. nonsense. That's fine. All right, so we have an input hint, and that'll give you on email, that should actually be on the other one. This will be on a mobile device when you're editing it. You'll have the keyboard for mobile, you'll have an @ symbol, an email, you'll get a different input one on here. For the preview, you don't see that though. For placeholder, if you need placeholder, you can do it the same way. Use a string approach, and then you can just pass it down to the text input. A quick note on this, text input is actually a really special class. And if you're just doing this for your project, go ahead and do it this way. This is fine. If you're creating kind of a library, there is a special way to do text inputs. The type text edit does that. You look at the form for text edit, because forwarding all these properties for the text thing is kind of annoying, and there's a special mechanism that works for text edit, text input. But for your own applications, it's really not a big deal. Just forward the ones you want. And if you don't know how to forward, just make slightly different classes. It's another option. You don't have to worry about getting everything correct in your own project. What I want to do is the error case here now. Let's save this and we can do the error case. We might as well, because it's not that much work and it's not taking so long. So that if something's wrong, this one shows red, and it seems to only show red if it's empty. Not perfect. I don't want to go about how we detect the error right now. We just want to have, there should be something called a, do we support Boolean at this level? I'm going to try it. There's a possibility that we don't. And all right, so Ahmed has a link for me, and this is the problem when I have chat under the window, is I can't actually show you that link. And oh, they have error labels. Okay, I'll get back to that in a second if we actually have that, have error labels. Let's do this valid thing first. And so what I want to do now is I want to say, I just stick it in here. While true. You know, I'm going to invert this, and there's a lot of sense of inverting this because the default is true. And so I'm going to say while true value equals property this dot invalid. So if it is invalid, and you'll have to get the naming on your own correct, whether you want to have valid and invalid or while true and not true. And so we can do something really simple here. Rectangle layer equals background. And I don't know, I just throw some stupid red in here for now. Let's just do FFCCCC and just make it somewhat transparent. Well, that should be clear enough anyways. And that'll stick it in the background. But we have no way to trigger this right now. So I'm going to add another little box at the bottom. I'm going to put a stack panel at the bottom here. This will be our debug panel. This will be a switch. While true, change, gonna have to change something, but let me worry about that in a second. Just set this up. And lacking for delete key. Alright, so it's the end of the stack panel. And we want to turn it on and off for the name. And you can't call this, you don't really want to call this name because we're using the other variable name, so let's just call it text name. So now we should do is change text name dot invalid equals true. There we go. And that turns it red and turns it red and off. It's not exactly in the right position, and let's put it in the exact place they want it. So it covers that whole thing, that little box in the bottom. Because we know the padding, there are a few ways to cheat. You could do the lines. You could actually have a little separate layer for that bottom bit. So they put this whole little bottom bit in a panel and then embed it in there. Or since we know the sizing of this, we can actually do something like, how can we do this? Or maybe we can't because of the padding already. No, I don't want to change the whole structure of it now. We can at least change it to be a stroke color. At least we can do this, so it's not, it's some of the stroke color, and then we have that. So, right, because it's hard to move this away, but you can do margin like this. Negative margins, I think they work. I don't remember. There's no reason why they shouldn't work. Oops, that's the wrong thing. All right, so that circles the whole thing. Exactly where you want to put it is up to you. They have it exactly on there. And if we look at our exact margins, we have that padding of 535. So we can get it a little closer than that. We can do like -7 or something. That gets it a little bit closer. And it's a little bit more red than that. So let's go figure out what that red is. We have an invalid thing here somewhere in the CSS, I think. Do we have an invalid something or other in here? Something looks red. And either is red color is invalid. That's not red. That's not red. It's not red. Bar after, that's fine. Input focus. Highlight. I'm actually not clear on what's doing the red bit here. There's got to be something here in the CSS that's doing the red bit. I don't see any colors that are red though. It's not red, that's yellow. And it's got a kind of shadow on it too, I think. I think it's shadow, or maybe that's just or maybe this is like some native thing. I don't know. I don't see here what's red, to be honest. Highlight, is it highlight? No, I don't think so. Maybe it is. Alright, I don't actually know where the red's coming from. There's something I'm missing here, something I'm missing in the CSS. I don't know what's actually creating that red bit when it's invalid. I just really don't. There's no JavaScript here associated with it either. So I'm just going to live with it. Let's just make it slightly more red, okay? New AA and 2222 or something like that. Or maybe a bit too red. That was more of a bright red. Let's go with it. There we go. So it's more red. And it's even less red than that, but you can deal with it. And we have a test switch here to turn it on and off because I don't actually have a condition that I want to check on. You can base your conditions based on the model you want to attach it to the string, or you can have while strings and stuff on here. And I'll just have it explicit for now just so that we can see that. And that should give us everything we actually need. This bundles it up into a component. You can throw that component in a separate file as well. I'm just going to leave it here for simplicity. Is there anything else we have to do with this control, or is this considered finished then? And it's always interesting when you do like stuff in the browser. There's a little bit of flickering when I switch, and there's a little flickering in the animation, there's a bit of tearing. I don't think that's intended. So we don't have that flickering and tearing here. It's a lot smoother. And so if you want a different easing on the bars, you can just add a different easing. I didn't twitch it too much. And I think that's actually it that I have So we covered that. I think this handles Sat's original request that we show how to do this type of design. We have the focus there, and it works on focus. And if you type something in, it keeps the name to the side. And I'm going to leave out the air conditioning now that Ahmed pulled up. It's just another case of how to put it on another string. I'm going to keep it at this for now. It's a fairly straightforward little demo then and tutorial. And I'm glad Sat's recommended it. It was a good way for me to test out my new equipment and get back into the show. So I'm glad you guys tuned in, and I really hope you liked it this time. It's something simple. And if you do have more requests, just go off in the Slack channel and request them, or post them to me on Twitter. That's also fine. I will be uploading this show to YouTube. Be sure to follow my YouTube and be sure to share the show. I have a Patreon account as well that helps show interest in the show. As long as there's enough interest, I'll keep doing these Fuse videos. But I really need to see that interest there. It does take a bit of time out of my day, and I will actually look at other code and stuff as well. So please show your interest on that. Follow, maybe support me on Patreon as well. And then I can see the interest in the show, and we'll keep producing these videos then. I thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I can do another show soon. If I get enough time tomorrow morning, I'll try one as well because we're falling behind. But otherwise, I'll come back to this on next week. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again later. Bye.